үндэсний байгууллагын хөгжлийн хөтөлбөрийн BIOFIN төслийн бодлогын мэргэжилтэн ноён Massimiliano Riva таныг танилцуулга хийхийг урьж байна.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the lunch as I did. It's a pleasure to be here today. I work for the United Nations Development Programme, and particularly I'm here to partner with the Biodiversity Finance Initiative, which is an innovative program that looks on how different types of financial flows can help to preserve our ecosystems and our nature. The topic that I was asked to bring to you is the importance of understanding and disentangling what financial flows, the direction and the composition of finance flows that are going into environmental sectors and particularly into climate expenditures and biodiversity expenditure. So this, we have heard of a lot of aspirations and visions, but it's still a very important indication is where people spend their money. It still tells what you think today, what you think is important. And that's why we give a lot of attention and importance in understanding what are those mechanisms. But before getting into some numbers on biodiversity and climate expenditures, I will give you just a quick introduction on why and how this information is used. Because understanding and analysis of financial data and financial information is only useful as it is used for policy and investment purposes. I will first start with how, and this is also an appeal to you, to the banking system, to the financial association, is to make sure that we understand and we work together to measure what are the investments that are going into nature from the private sector. This is a challenge that we have been confronted with, and this is a challenge that we need to work with you. But let's first understand why there has been so much importance given to the role of the private sector in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the components of the Agenda 2030. Because the financial landscape has changed. Traditionally, public objectives and public policy objectives were thought to be achieved through public finance alone, or what was called official development assistance. This was the framework of the Millennium Development Goals. But with the challenges that confront our world today, we cannot only rely on those resources, which remains at the backbone of the development agenda. We need to work, we need to find new venues to work with the financial system and the private sector to deliver on those goals. And the world has changed. The volume, the type of financial flows that are now crossing so many borders have created a new universe of opportunities, but also complexity and risks. And it's very important that we do understand those risks and those complexities. Here you see also a very good news. The world has never been so rich. Wealth has been estimated by Credit Suisse to be more than 250 trillion. This is the highest point in history. But this wealth is very concentrated in a few markets, in few financial centers, and in a few regions, even within countries. So we need to understand how these financial flows can reach and can be invested in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's why that we are studying in details how those financial flows work. This is another good news, and a lot of previous speakers have mentioned the green bond markets, which didn't exist 10 years ago. It's from 0 to 200 billion in just 10 years. What we have seen today is there is a new generation of investors that has been persuaded and have themselves led the way to a new form of responsible investment. And I think the demonstration of the Sustainable Finance Forum today is that also Mongolia is going in that direction. And these emerging trends, these emerging volumes of financial products that are at disposal of investors and companies is growing at 2 digits sometimes. And you see that a new consideration has accompanied return on investment, and this is intent. This is the willingness to invest in projects that do not only provide financial return, but they also provide a positive social and environmental income. And the steps taken by several institutions today seem very promising to move these markets also in Mongolia. This is a huge opportunity and we need to take advantage of it. In the Biodiversity Finance Initiative and in the work that the UN system is putting forward to help and support countries achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, we started to look on how we could address the gaps, the financial gaps and the financial challenges that make the achievement of those goals very difficult or impossible. And we say and we start that knowing first where the money goes is where we need to start. We need to start to see where public finance is going, where private investment is going, and we need to understand why it's going in those directions. And after this reasoning and reflection, we move up into the costing of the needs of a country. What is your national development strategy willing to achieve? What is your biodiversity strategy willing to achieve? What is your climate strategy willing to achieve? So after we get an understanding of the landscape of the system, we look at, with governments and our partners, in costing those needs. And we look at different ways to address those financial gaps of pipeline of projects. And this is what sometimes we aim to call finance plan or financing framework. And here in Mongolia, the Biodiversity Finance Initiative is particularly working on a framework for nature and conservation. This is the theoretical approach that we present and tend to present to countries, because it's important to understand that to achieve those sustainable development goals is not only about putting more resources. It's about investing the resources we have in better ways. It's about reducing the future cost of companies and government. There is still not sufficient resources to close all those gaps. But if you reduce our needs by using ESG, environmental social governance, by investing in renewable energy, by investing in instruments that can better help to manage our expenditures, such as insurance, we reduce the cost of achieving the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and as well as the cost of doing business. So we firmly believe that there are 4 main strategies that we wish to work with countries on the financing for the SDG framework. And this is about realigning expenditures to see where the existing resources may be put from a place where it's not efficiently allocated to another place where it's efficiently allocated. It's about investing now to reduce future costs for the future. And here there is an important research and important studies that have been done on the cost of pollution in Ulaanbaatar, and I'm sure that you're very well aware of these concerns. It's also, of course, about delivering better, about spending better those resources, about having more effective financial mechanisms to provide the money to the project that need it. And finally, it's also about generating more resources, looking at all possible ways and means. In order to reflect, to speak and discuss about those strategies, we need first to understand where the financial flows go. And that's the main topic of this presentation, and I will show you a few emerging data and findings from our work that have been conducting in over 50 countries around studying those flows. And with our partners, UNEP, the UN system, and other organizations, have been conducting more than 75 expenditure reviews. What are those analyses looking at? They're looking at primarily at how the government and how the international community invest in nature, how the money is spent and where the money goes. And this wealth of information is used for several means. The first is to reveal, to be transparent and to be clear on where the money goes. The second use of this information is to advocate, to speak with the different partners and actors to understand why money doesn't go in certain areas, to understand why the private sector doesn't invest in certain areas. But it's also ultimately to drive reform and to drive change. Here are the findings from climate expenditure reviews, and you see that, for example, many countries in the Asian region really care about adaptation. It's about reducing risk of climate change. It's where you see some islands that spend more than 10% of their total expenditure in climate adaptation. Countries are investing in it. There are resources invested in it. And this tells what are the priorities and how the government themselves invest their scarce resources. And you see there is a lot of variance and there is a lot of differences depending on the country context. We are also working, and this